This is our last monthly members meeting for the fall. So it was July and August off, but we're certainly busy in August with Dark Sky Weekend and Notably East at Prominent. So no lacking of astronomy related activities. So RASC Halifax Centre respectfully acknowledges that we live and observe on the unceded territory of many people. And we believe in and practice inclusivity and diversity. Halifax Centre welcomes all with an interest in astronomy without prejudice. The stars belong to everyone. So today's meeting, we've got a pretty packed meeting. After this welcome and introductions, I'll run a photo montage of images collected by Halifax Centre members over May. We've got Explore the Universe guides for sale. I'll remind you in a minute about the AstroImaging Contest. Our first speaker is Tiffany Fields, who's going to tell us what it's like to be a PGO technician. There will then be a social break, and there's some telescopes set up. People are interested in having a look. Peter and I thought that given that Blair's talking on changes in astroimaging, we'd highlight some options for people that want to get started in astrophotography, right from the C-Star 50, which is a pretty easy entry to it, or a star tracker for a DSLR, up to a lightweight equatorial mount and small imaging refractor. As I said, Blair is going to tell us about changes in astroimaging. Then I'll mention some outreach activities and opportunities, news from the board, from McGrath, and we'll end up with what's up in June. The AstroImaging Contest, the deadline for submissions is November 24th, midnight. 2024.
It's on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website. And any Halifax Centre member or resident of Nova Scotia is eligible to submit images in any of the three categories: wide field, planetary, and deep sky. So there's a number of really nice images to admire from the past month. Not a lot of deep sky, because the nearly full moon and raining clouds didn't have a lot of clear nights, so that's some good days. So we'll start off with the aurora. This picture was taken by Jerry Black the day after the brilliant of the aurora, but you can still see it on the horizon. So even on the Saturday night, it was there. And you took this on the way to Windsor?
Yes, yeah, the Blomidon is at the horizon there.
Right. Okay. And Jerry also captured this image of comet CD 2023 A3, currently in Virgo. You can see it's already got quite a nice tail, and this is a comet to watch if it all goes well and it survives its trip around the sun. By mid-October, we might have a unaided eye visible comet. It's current magnitude is 11.2, so it's clearly a telescope target. But it's pretty promising. Michael Bullshot on May 7th captured this hydrogen alpha image of the sun. That's nice. As usual, by pointing the telescope out the window and holding a DSLR up to darkpiece. This is what Michael got. Pretty good. You can see sunspots, some filaments, and prominences. Pretty nice. I think he took 2 exposures. One to capture the surface detail and one to get the Barry Burgess went to Prince Edward Island, and he must have an early warning detector because he knew to go to PEI to get a whole series of fantastic shots of the May 10 aurora. Fantastic event to cap off clear skies for the total solar eclipse. So, pretty amazing couple months. And when Barry came back to Nova Scotia on May 11th, he captured this image. So there was still plenty of aurora activity. Very nice artistic image. Foreground. Jason Dane was in Wyoming, but on his way back on the red eye, he took this picture out of the airplane window, May 13th. I think this was early morning, May 13th. Still lots of aurora. Jason Dane also captured this image of the Medusa Nebula and Gemini. Lots of nice hydrogen emission and oxygen emission. Jeff Donaldson got this, snapped this image of the aurora on May 10 from Gore. Jeff said he went out to Fort House Hill, but there were over 100 people there and it was too crowded, so we went to a private spot he booked. Jeff also snapped this picture of this deep sky image of an open star cluster, NGC 6791 in Lyra. And Lisa Ann Fanning in New Jersey got the shot of the aurora. So we know that people were seeing it pretty far south, Florida and Puerto Rico. We've seen aurora. Pretty fabulous, man. Paul Gray put this montage together, showing some of his eclipse images. I grabbed this shot of sunspot group AR3664, which is the sunspot that let off a series of X-class solar flares that was responsible for the aurora display on May 10th. This is just as it was starting to rotate out of view, still a really big sunspot. Equivalent in size to the sunspot that was responsible for the Carrington.
David, was that a white light image or?
That's white light, yeah.
That's what,
Did you color that then?
Yes. Yeah. I colorize it.
or used glass filter.
Yeah. Either way. This is the hydrogen alpha image I took on the 15th. Because I really thought these little loop prominences were pretty cool. They're big. And I had my Dwarf 2 out and just grabbed this quick shot of Arcturus and an asterism you may not be aware of. This asterism is called the Foley's Hat. So easy to find. Just look at find Arcturus, red supergiant in Lotus, and just to one side and see Foley's. Karen Hamlin put this montage together from great clips and images. John McPhee titles this the Pumpkin Moon. It's colored in the moon shot. This is, it must have just been finding. Gaurav Singh, he's been doing a bit of Milky Way imaging. This is the shot he took. I think he titled it Stairway to Heaven. Vincent Valley took this image of the Pelican Nebula, SCO, nebula, mission nebula he found in Cygnus. And lastly, here's a shot from Nancy Walker's all-sky camera of the May 10 aurora. Kathy's was in Annapolis Valley, and you can see directly overhead there was a auroral stream covered just about the whole sky. So pretty neat. And that's it for Local Montage.
Okay, so
So now
next,
we'll move on to
Tiffany.
feature presentation. So Judy Black is going to introduce Tiffany.
Stand where he is.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Judy Black. I'm Vice President of the local center. It gives me great honor to actually introduce Tiffany this afternoon, rather, so haven't had lunch yet, so it's still morning. I first became aware of Tiffany when she spoke as a student at Nova East. Way back when, I can't remember the years, but within the last 10 anyway. And you were defending your master's thesis at the time. She is currently the astronomy tech at the Burt Gaffney Observatory. And prior to that, her predecessor, Dave Lane, was the one that recognized her talent and her interest in that particular area. And so mentored her towards that goal of becoming his successor upon his retirement about 2.5 years old or so. He always had great confidence in your ability, and he's proving to be quite right. For those that don't know, she's also helping RASC, our own center, with respect to, she manages the SMU servers that manage our discussion list and our board lists and all those sorts of good things, or email lists. So to that end, you're very helpful to us. But you're here not because of that role, you're here because of your role at BGO. So we're really intrigued to hear what it is to be a BGO tech. So take it away, Tiffany.
All right. Thank you. I'll sort of stand, we'll figure it out. You'll probably have to move the camera around. Hello, I am Tiffany Fields. Thank you for that introduction. Made me almost start to tear up before we even begin, but we'll get there too. So I am the astronomy technician here at St. Mary's University. I run the Burt Gaffney Observatory that we have here on campus, in addition to a variety of other things. Can I get
Yeah,
the
you
clicker?
can left click on that.
On the, yeah, okay, cool. I'm just gonna offer these. But technically my job title is that I am science technician to astronomy, but astronomy technician, observatory technician, whatever fits the situation best is typically what I go by. Cool. Oh, first, I just had my wisdom teeth out. So I'm still dealing with the fact that it's a little bit hard to talk. So I just ask for some niceness, I guess, as we go through this. But we're here today. It's fine. We're here. So my background, I did an undergrad in astrophysics here at St. Mary's. I did a master's degree in astronomy here at St. Mary's. Throughout my time as a student here at SMU, I got to sort of squeeze myself into all of the things observatory related. Dave, as mentioned, was very kind to let me get myself involved in all of the things. So I have been a telescope operator, public tour guide at the observatory off and on since about 2015. This photo that I use for like everything now is from about 2015, and I find still gets used in SMU advertisements and such even today. But of course my role now is that I'm the astronomy tech. So much bigger role in the observatory at this point. Well, first, I took this photo immediately after I was offered the astrotech position. I happened to be walking home from SMU. I was teaching physics labs part-time, and I got a phone call and was able to grab the picture with me pointing at a little dome on top of the Loyola residence building at that time, which was pretty cool. But I need to get a little bit sad for a moment. Because, as mentioned, I took over the astronomy technician job from my predecessor, Dave Lane, who we recently lost. This is just the second RASC meeting here at SMU without him. And I'm gonna tear up, but it's fine. My position, I really stand like I see like up here. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Dave was the astronomy technician for 29 years, 8 months and 4 days. He was director of the observatory for about half that. So I'm the astronomy technician. There's a faculty member that holds the title of observatory director. But I really, really would not be where I am without Dave. And the observatory, the Burt Gaffney Observatory, St. Mary's University would not be where they are without Dave either. He built up the observatory into the incredible thing that it is now. Lots and lots and lots of credit to Dave there. I've got some other photos just to extend the SADs for just another slide. I spent a lot of time with Dave throughout my time as tour guide when I was learning all of the things, so many things from him. We had a bit of an overlap period from before he retired and when I started. So we had an overlap period where he was able to teach me all about the observatory, work on some things together. There's a photo of him here with his Abbey Bridge Observatory in his backyard, which was always crazy to me that he had his own observatory in his backyard and that he essentially used as a guinea pig for everything that he had built into the BGO. So there's a photo of the two of us standing on ladders here with the observatory telescope. There's a photo down here of him talking about the 50 years of the observatory at the podium. News article about when the roboticness of the observatory came online from back in 2015, 2016 or so. Just can't really talk about being the astronomy technician without mentioning Dave here. Okay. So what is the Burt Gaffney Observatory? We'll take a couple of steps back here. The observatory is on top of the tall residence building that we have here at St. Mary's. So we are sitting here at the bottom of the atrium. If you were to go outside and look up, you can see the observatory dome at the top of that tall building. So there's some photos here. We're at the top of the tall building here. There's some really, really lovely sunsets from up there. And there's a great view of downtown Halifax, of the harbor, the occasional rainbow, sort of difficult to see on this screen. Occasional rainbow in the situations, right? And the observatory is also a combination of just all of its different components. So we've got the big telescope, we've got some smaller telescopes. There are some weather sensors and such that are out on the roof, both to aid in the robotic telescope and to report the weather. It's a weather station too. It consists of so many lines of code to make the robotic system work. You've got awesome views of the dome and of sunsets, and of course the observatory is made up of the people that work in it. So I'm the astronomy technician. I'm the one that takes care of the observatory. I do all of the stuff with the observatory. We've got the observatory director. Then we have a variety of tour guides and volunteers that help us with outreach at the observatory. So there's a bunch of people around, a lot of students, RASC folks that help out at the observatory as well. So at the Burt Gaffney Observatory, we have this big telescope, the Dr. Ralph McGrath telescope. We were able to upgrade our telescope about 10 years ago from a donation from the McGrath family. So we've called the telescope the Dr. Ralph McGrath telescope. His name is Ralph. This is Ralph. We call him Ralph. And Ralph is a robot. So this PlaneWave CDK 24-inch or 61-centimeter diameter mirror sitting on top of this L600 mount in a 15-foot dome on the top of the building. The whole observatory is a robot, has a robotic interface, a whole bunch of software to keep it going. Should just carry this with me. So the robotic capabilities of our telescope, I talked about this a little bit before, and this isn't really the subject of this talk, but just touching on it. The telescope is connected to social media. So our telescope here at SMU can take requests from anybody in the world over, and I say social media, that social media is sort of ebbing and flowing as the different social media interfaces throw tantrums and such. But these are some screenshots from earlier this month. This platform is Mastodon. I've got a Mastodon server if you're like really into new social medias like I am trying to be. The telescope used to be on Twitter, but Twitter has been a mess. But the telescope has a phone number that you can text. It's got an email that you can send emails to. It's on Facebook Messenger, though it has trouble sending Facebook messages. And it's also on Mastodon. So anybody in the world can ask our telescope to take an image. And the next clear night, our telescope will go out, take that image, and send it back to the person that requested it. But also post publicly what it's doing. So a couple of images that we've got there. So it's got this robotic interface that allows individuals all over the world to use our telescope. It also allows our students to use our telescope a little bit more easily than making them stay up all night at the observatory. They can just send in requests and the telescope will go take. Did I miss one? Oh no,
Want to
I
go
don't
back?
know if I did. Yeah, let's go back one.
Huh, let's go back.
Previous. Yes. Okay, it was just this. What does an astronomy technician do? So this is, what does my job actually look like? I'm gonna carry this around again. Okay, I took this from my actual job description from when I was hired. Yeah. The observatory is supposed to be 40% of my job. I've got computer systems administration, 20%. And then public outreach of some sort as another 40% of my job. Plus, of course, other related duties as assigned. So whatever else comes up, it's also in my ballpark.
How does that align with reality?
See, that's a good question that I was thinking about over the last couple of days. It depends on what's going wrong when. I do so much public outreach, definitely. The computer systems admin, I think, is probably lower day to day, unless a server dies or something goes wrong, then it's like more. But maintaining the observatory, on average, it's not too far. Anyway, I've got this huge list next to it because this is what a whole bunch of other sort of titles that I feel like I do on a day-to-day basis. I've got a whole bunch of things that in my job as astronomy technician, I end up doing. Things like computer programmer, of course, observatory technician is in there. Things like IT support, when those printers stop working. Media personality, teacher, mentor, social media manager, project manager, mechanic, sometimes, electrician. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can imagine with a big robotic observatory. There's a whole bunch of things that goes into one day after another of being the astronomy technician here at SMU. But given all of these like roles that I generally take on, this is how I feel a lot of the time. And like going from this, given that I wear so many hats, it is very, very likely that any single person in this room on any given topic probably knows more about that topic than I do. We're going to hear about astrophotography later. Definitely, I run an observatory that has cameras. I would not call myself an expert in astrophotography, that's for sure. So, like, this is fine. It's totally okay. It's reasonable that I don't know how to do everything perfectly. I tell myself this a lot. And regardless, my job is very unique, and I get to do a lot of interesting things with it. So I've got just a list of some interesting things that I tend to do. And my plan is I'm going to go through this list with just a whole bunch of photos and just share what that looks like. So things like managing a moody robot telescope. I get to work with students. I do a lot of group tours. Things like figuring out how to use new equipment, cleaning. Telescope is open to the air. Sometimes you gotta peel moths off a mirror. I do a lot of fixing broken things. There was a cool eclipse event that I planned. I get a lot of help from others. Got some photos of that, and I do recently, at least, quite a few media appearances as well. Things like CTV National News last night, for example. So getting started here, this managing a moody robot. So our telescope is on social media. It's a robot, but that means I get a lot of angry DMs from the telescope. If something goes wrong, so maybe the telescope will post on social media, an error occurred during observatory startup, and then it will sort of throw a tantrum and say, I'm shutting down the observatory for the night, which is fine. Like, that's how it's supposed to work, where if something goes wrong, it just safely shuts itself down, no big deal. But that thing that goes wrong maybe is that the dome shutter is frozen shut because we're in the middle of winter and it snowed last week and everything's melting. So I've got a photo of me standing at the bottom of the dome shutter near this motor that opens and closes the dome shutter. And so it can be the sort of thing where during the daytime, I'm standing up there and it opens and closes, no problem. But then we get to nighttime and it's like, no, thank you. I'm not doing that. Sometimes there might be an issue with the camera. Just telescope sends me angry messages. I go through its logs the next morning and see what went wrong. That's fine. The telescope probably thinks similar thing. It's managing a moody human. That's me. And I find myself sometimes sitting on the floor with different things plugged into different areas. There's this sign that I have a photo of that says, attention, I'm taking calibration images. Any light will ruin this process. Do not open. Turns out, somehow, whenever I try to take calibration images during the day, that's like exactly when security needs to check up on something or maintenance needs to go into the dome, and like they go in and open the door. I've had that happen enough times that generally whenever I do this, put this note on the dome door. Image of me over here on the right as well, just probably the telescope decided to not run overnight, and I went in the morning and checked it and everything was working perfectly fine. Just not really sure when my telescope is not doing the right thing. So I'm making it sound like the telescope doesn't work very well. It does. It totally does. Software is great. Dave did an incredible job with the software and all of the safety checks that it goes through and whatnot. But I tend to have conversations with the telescope, I think is where this would go. So a lot of my job just talking to this guy up in the dome, whether through DMs on social media or just being out there and asking him what he's doing. Next thing here, sort of more of a light or upbeat thing. I do a lot of working with students. So of course, being at a university, we have an undergraduate degree in astrophysics here. So we have students that use the observatory to do projects, observing projects, but we also have a lot of student volunteers that help us out with outreach, so group tours, things like that. It's difficult to see. Up on the top left here, there is a student that was helping me out with one of the tours. And this is actually an image of the moon being projected from the eyepiece, I think just onto a clipboard or something. We were pretty excited to see this, and the kids on the tour were really excited about it as well. I got an image of Catherine using the Dobsonian with a solar filter on our observation deck here at the bottom left as well. The undergraduate students have a astronomy and physics society that they organize and run. And there was a partial solar eclipse back in October where they wanted to use that partial solar eclipse as practice for the total solar eclipse, well, partial here, but total solar eclipse that we had back in April. So some of the astronomy and physics undergraduate students in the society came up to the observatory to figure out how to use our Dobsonian telescopes with the solar filters, how they would be able to share those with others. So there's a photo of Catherine using the solar telescope there. In the middle, this one was pretty fun. In the middle, we have the observatory director, Vincent, here, and he is actually in a class here. So this is one of our students, his name is RASC. And what's happening in this middle photo is we actually use the observatory as a location to do a bit of a science communication jamboree as part of a low stakes project for students in this fourth year astronomy undergraduate class. So we sort of treated it like what would happen in an outreach event. Maybe we've got a whole bunch of people come in, they've got questions of different types. And so the students needed to draw a question out of a hat and answer it in the observatory space. So I brought them tidbits as a gift as we were doing that. So we get to use the observatory space a lot for student projects and for interesting things that they might not be able to experience otherwise. There's this photo on the right here as well. This was taken as part of a professional photo shoot that we did a couple of years ago. But it shows a few of the students that help us out with observatory things. And the trusty telescope in the middle. In the red, this is a PhD student. His name is Fraser. He is one of our tour guides that leads the public tours. There's me in the yellow. This is Abigail. She is now a master's student. She's also one of the tour guides. This is Dr. Vincent Albernay, who's the director. And then this is Lucy. They're one of the undergraduate students here in the program. So I get to work with students quite a bit as well in this job. A lot of my job, which I love, and it's great and so much fun, is managing the public tours and leading group tours through the observatory space. So personally, I do about one group tour per week through the observatory. And those are groups like Girl Guides, classrooms, some other sorts of student groups. There's some like groups similar to this one, just like groups of people that send me an email and say, hey, we're interested in this, we would like to come through. Like, yeah, let's get you on the calendar, let's bring you through. So with the group tours that I do, we run them whether the skies are clear or cloudy, so they often happen when the skies are cloudy. And I do a little bit of a classroom presentation where we chat about fun space stuff, and then I take them into the observatory space, where often we just get to see the telescope wiggle around, because often the skies are cloudy. But if the skies are clear, we'll get the telescope started up and look at a couple of objects through the telescope with the group as well. I think there is a huge hunger for astronomy locally, both based on the demand for these group tours that I do and based on the demand for the public tours that we run as well. So the public tours we run roughly every other weekend, all throughout the year, and those are led by tour guides. So typically a graduate student that's trained how to use the telescope safely will run a public tour with a few volunteers the first clear night or the most clear night of a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And we'll use the observation deck that we've got on the rooftop of the building. We'll use the big telescope to look at a few objects up in the sky. And we have a pretty small space at the observatory upstairs. So I limit any groups to about 25 people in size. The free tickets that we have for these public tours are always scooped up in a few minutes whenever they become available. There's huge, huge demand, I find, for astronomy locally, which is great. It's a lot of fun. So there's some other photos here. This is just a photo of our observation deck looking towards the dome that's opened with the red lights on the inside. You can sort of see some of our Dobsonian telescopes up there. And then during the summer, I find that there's quite a few youth groups that are looking for interesting daytime activities. So sometimes as well, I have groups come through in the daytime to do tours where if the skies are sunny, I'll plop some sort of solar telescope out on the roof and we'll enjoy taking a look at the sun. So this is a group doing just that. They're actually trying to use their phone at the bottom of this H alpha telescope to take a photo of what they're looking at there. And then something else that I deal with is figuring out how some new stuff works. I'm going to start over here, down at the bottom right. There is a red tarp over this telescope, but I was very excited about getting this red tarp. It is waterproof. It's made such that it perfectly covers the telescope. It was made based on the telescope size. In the observatory dome upstairs, the dome is 50 years old, a little over 50 years old. It's weather resistant, but it's not weatherproof. If it rains, we get a little bit of a trickle of water down from the top of the dome. If it snows, snow can get in through like the sides of the dome shutter. And sometimes I end up with a little bit of a pile of snow on the floor that I've got to like shovel out. Anyway, so I've got this new tarp that I recently had a local business make based on the size of the telescope. This was very exciting, this new red tarp. Something else that should, I think, be more exciting, but has been kind of tricky to figure out is we have a new camera for the Burt Gaffney Observatory. I have 3 cameras on the back of the telescope. One of them, which was our main camera, has recently died. So in the mail from Diffraction Limited, I have an Illuma AC4040 CMOS camera that I'm holding in my hands in my office here, that I am working on getting onto the back of the telescope. Something that I should have known before we got this telescope is, or before we got the camera, I should say, is how does back focus work? And so you can see me trying to like roughly figure out how even the cameras that we currently have on the back of the telescope fit. That's a whole problem that I'm running into right now, because the details that I get from PlaneWave about the telescope totally do not match what Dave has set up in the back of the telescope. And what Dave has is right, so there's a miscommunication somewhere. So I'm trying to figure out how to sort that all out. It's not just centimeters to inches, although the factor there is actually almost correct. I don't think that's the issue, but that would be very funny if that actually was the issue. Anyway, so part of what I do is figure out how things work, how to get things installed on the back of the telescope. But also genuinely, if anybody wants to help me with this back focus issue that I have, let me know. We'll chat.
Tiffany, when you throw something at Dave, don't hit me.
Just the mouse.
Throws like a girl.
And so continuing on here, running a big observatory that is sometimes open to the outside air, there is quite a bit of cleaning that I find myself doing. I've got this tiny little shop vac that I picked up at Canadian Tire, which I love because it's really easy to wiggle around. But I've got this shop vac, sometimes precariously set on a set of like a small ladder. I'll vacuum up the dust from just like the mount and such. Got to clean the mirror every so often. Clean the mirror about once a year with very gentle wipes, but part of the telescope has to come apart in order for us to do that. But then like also because we're open to the outside air, that means like sometimes we got to do a little bit of bug catching, which really freaks me out, being honest. There's a photo in the middle here on the bottom of me holding a bug net. Last summer I had a problem with really giant wasps. So I made somebody else actually go into the dome with a bug net to see if they could find anything. But sometimes it's as simple as like, there might be a little bit of a spider that makes itself a home on, like say the truss, the little arms here of the telescope that just has to be cleaned up a little bit. So we can try to keep the telescope nice and tidy. I really should go up there actually very soon and do a pretty deep clean on the observatory. It's pretty dusty up there, right? Sort of continuing on with this whole pointed list. So much of my job and so much what I do day to day depends on what is working and what is not working. So a whole bunch of my job is just troubleshooting, figuring out what is not working, and then figuring out how to fix that thing that is not working. I've got a variety of photos here. If I start at the far left, there's a photo of the inside of a box that holds a bunch of the wiring for some webcams that I've got outside. There's a photo here, so second from the left, where there is rope tied to the telescope to keep the telescope pointed in a certain direction. The mount that we got on the telescope is awesome. It is also very well balanced. So if I try to take something off the back, it just sort of flops one way or another. And honestly, just tying it down with a little bit of rope is typically the easiest way to deal with that. But it looks kind of weird and precarious, and I've got a whole bunch of green tape stuck to all the different wires of a whole bunch of different things. Up at the top, whole bunch of networking cables. There's so many different things that talk to each other. And a lot of it has to be sort of channeled through holes in the wall, holes through the dome to get from one place to another. Down in the middle here, this is an individual from facilities management, actually. Lovely, lovely person helping me get the dome unstuck. When it may or may not have been frozen otherwise, and some of the wheels may have a little bit of a black spot on them. In any case, getting help from others, sometimes with the dome there. And then I've got a photo on the right here of the inside of one of our filter wheels for our camera. Sometimes this camera needs to be taken apart, a piece of it needs to be taken out and replaced. And it's a pretty cool view. You don't get to see all of the different filters very often. So a lot of taking things apart and plugging things in, and trying new cables, and just trying to figure out what's going wrong and fixing what needs to be fixed. And honestly, so this is the desk up in the observatory office space, and it often will just look like this, where there is just a whole bunch of stuff out on the desk. And you might notice that I've got a phone on a tripod up there because I try to record all of these niche things that I do, because I need to do them like once, and then I'm sure months or a couple of years down the road I'm going to need to do it again. So I try to record the different things that I am doing, which is helpful because in a presentation like this, I've got all these photos that I can share. But indeed, this is the old camera that's not working. This is camera that is working, and they're filter wheels, and I was trying to make them work with each other a little bit there. Notably, a lot of my work is benefits from help from others. I had that whole slide about how I felt like an imposter. But I can't know all of the things about all of the things. So I try to use other people and their knowledge as much as I reasonably can. There's a photo of me and John Reed over here on the left. Again, the telescope is tied down, and there's actually a telescope mount, a heavy telescope mount that is holding my CDK-24 upwards. But me and John were taking some bits off the back of the telescope there. In the middle here, the last time I did a talk at one of these meetings, we had just replaced the 50-year-old mount that was holding the telescope at the Burke-Gaffney Observatory. This is that mount piece that sat in my observatory dome for like a year. It weighed 500 pounds. And this was a group of folks very nicely taking that piece of equipment out of the observatory dome for me. And it went off to the trash, which makes me feel bad, but nobody here stepped up to take it. But indeed, finally got rid of that observatory mount. There is a photo here at the bottom. In the door is the mini robotic observatory that Dave had built, that we had brought back here to campus. Had a variety of people, graduate students, and John Reed, and observatory director, a variety of people help us move that from one location to another so that we can get the mini robotic observatory back up and running. And then I want to point out Michael Bochat often watches the observatory webcams, which I think is great. Michael found this photo from the observatory all sky camera from actually just a few nights ago, sent it to me by email when we had that lightning storm. So you can see the lightning in the all sky camera. So if anything happens to my webcams, Michael typically emails me and is like, hey, you should go check that, which is great because I don't always keep an eye on those webcams, but it's very helpful. It's very helpful to get that information. Sort of continuing on, I want to talk about the solar eclipse event that we held here at SMU, because in my role as astronomy technician, and also because St. Mary's University is the university locally that has an astrophysics program, we really felt like we should have something, some sort of event for the eclipse here. And so we managed to order a few thousand solar eclipse glasses with nice maroon SMU branding on them. Ordered a bunch of glasses. I started handing them out at BGO tours and at like the group tours that I do, all the while thinking April 8th, it's totally going to be rainy here in Halifax. But this is a photo on the right from the eclipse event that we ended up having here at St. Mary's. And this is just a photo of part of the football field. So the folks over with the Husky football field, all of the sporting folks at the Homburg Center, were so on board and so excited to help us host this eclipse event. And April 8th was also the last day of classes here on campus, and it was just this beautiful, beautiful day. So we had people streaming in to the football field. Had Wayne, and then we had Paul Heath from here at the RASC Center helping out, along with a few graduate students and undergrads. I had like 7 or 8 people from SMU that had volunteered to help out with this event. And then I started getting photos of how many people showed up, and I was like, wow, what did I set them up to do? Because I had escaped off to New Brunswick to go chase totality, left them all here with a few Dobsonians and solar filters. It was like, oh no. But it all turned out great from the reports that I heard. We had 2,500 to 3,000 people show up. We had about 700 pairs of eclipse glasses that we held back to hand out on this day, and all of those eclipse glasses were gone in like 30 minutes. It was crazy. It's crazy. But I feel so lucky to have been able to like create this event for the people on campus, for the people in the community. And we got to share the partial eclipse with folks, which was really neat. And because there have been some really interesting things happening in the sky recently with the eclipse and then the aurora, I found that light recently has also been a whole bunch of news and media appearances. So the one on the bottom is actually from early 2023 when comet ZTF something or other was up in the sky. But otherwise, a lot of these are talking about the eclipse, the upcoming aurora. So talking to folks on TV, folks on the radio, is really fun, and it's really cool to be able to share space stuff with them. And I always try at the end to like get the yellow shirt. Doesn't always work out, but I try. Sometimes what happens is yesterday, actually, I got an email in the morning being like, hey, I'm with CTV National News. We would love to do a Zoom interview with you about an hour and a half from now. And I'm sitting in my office upstairs, and I've got like, just like an old sweater on. I'm like, I need to find something to wear. So I did not yesterday for the CTV interview get my standard yellow shirt, but found something reasonable to wear. Down at the very, very bottom, I'll also point out that John Reed, Learn to Stargate's YouTube channel, has featured the observatory, I think both to his benefit and to our benefit a few times. There was a race between our robotic telescope and his StarSense Dobsonian out on the observation deck. It's a fun YouTube video if you want to go find that. And then just a lot of admiring the views from upstairs. A lot of sunsets, the occasional rainbow, the fog rolling in, There's that container yard with those big cranes there, blocked by the fog. So sort of wrapping this up, I've been talking for a while. I would love if anybody would like to get involved in the outreach things that we do at the observatory. Happy to chat, happy to have you involved. I find a lot of RASC related folks have a useful skill of being able to share the sky with people, or at least share the enthusiasm with others. So if you'd like to get involved, let me know, we can chat. I think there's gonna be a social break after this, so let me know. But I'll end it here. Again, Tiffany Fields, I'm the astronomy technician. Contact info and such here. I'm happy to take questions too, if you've got them.
What's with the yellow work?
I don't see, I just think it looks nice.
Oh, okay. It doesn't have any
No,
significant
Yeah.
historical context or.
and it ended up being the first couple of interviews that I did, coincidentally had the same yellow shirt. And so I was like, we're just gonna try to ride this train. So that was it.
By the way, talking to the telescope is not a problem.
Sometimes it's the replies.
Just talk to Jerry now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I talking to your telescope.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You learn 4-letter words, but
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Just a comment, Tiffany, not a question, but you said you have to use others with more expertise than yourself. I remember years ago having read the quote that an intelligent person is not the one that knows everything, but knows where to go to get the information.
Yeah,
So you're obviously doing that.
I try. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So, welcome back, everyone. We're proceeding on with our second feature presentation by Blair MacDonald. Blair is a longtime member of the Halifax Centre.
go ahead, make me feel old.
I'm older than you, but I'm not a long time member. Blair's a very accomplished astrophotographer, and he puts his images up on the web. Urban astronomy,
Next day.
night and day astrophotography. So Google it; you'll be amazed. Blair's going to tell us about how astrophotography has changed since the dark days of film.
Well, here's on my first slide. Okay.
Left click, yeah.
So, for those of you that don't know me, that was a pretty good introduction. I've been doing astrophotography for, as my wife would say, far too long. But so this will give you an idea. I've been doing astrophotography now for over 30 years. And we used to carve these things in stone, walking back and forth to the telescope. And as it says, uphill, both ways. But seriously, I've been fortunate enough to start in this hobby just as the technology, how about I stand over here, Jerry, so you don't have to
Yeah, that's good.
just as the technology started to make some major changes. So some of the changes that have come and gone, for that matter, since I started, super fast, low grain film. Now, for those that haven't done astrophotography before those films, we used to take a film called Tecapan. We used to put it in a sealed cylinder with a forming gas to change it from ISO 100 to a whopping ISO about 400-ish. And then store it in the freezer. I think I just got rid of the last roll that was in the bottom of our freezer when Karen asked me to clean it out one day last year. So it's been around a while. Computerized go-to mounts and auto guiding took a lot of the drudgery out of astrophotography. For those that have done manual guiding of a telescope, and I suspect there's only one or two here that have, yeah, Paul's hand goes up. You know what auto guiding has done. when you're standing there squinting through a little tiny eyepiece, a reticle eyepiece, and you're staring at it, and of course, you're looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, now I know that star is going to disappear if I stare at it long enough, which they always do. It's a trick of the human eye. If you stare at a little dot long enough, it disappears. And when it disappears, invariably is at that point where the gearing on your mount makes the telescope move a little bit. So you're sitting there rapidly correcting, and then the star goes away and you blink a few times. It drives you nuts. So auto guiding was a wonderful tool. Things like CCD imaging came along, and those that were the experts in astrophotography at the time, you know, the comments were, it'll never amount to anything. Digital imaging is a waste of time. Don't do that. DSLR imaging. The experts said, it'll never do what a CCD camera can do. Don't do that. Dedicated CMOS astro cameras have come along since then. It's nice to hear Tiffany say that you're putting a CMOS camera in the observatory. You may be surprised at the difference you see. And processing software. There has been a huge improvement in some of the processing software that's become available in the last 5 years or so. Some of it has made things like processing your images and calibrating and stacking them so much easier. The drudgery has been taken out. Still takes a long time for the software to run, but it's all automated. You can go and have coffee. So this is my first telescope. My wife purchased it for me in 1989 as a Christmas present. And I don't think she's forgiven herself yet. I got this scope and joined the RASC that year, or actually I guess the following year, and became known as that TASCO guy at observing sessions. It was one of those observing sessions where I met Dave Lane. I had just set the telescope up. Dave was coming up the hill at our old observing site at the Model Airplane Flying Club in North Beaverbank. And I think at that time he had an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain. And he was walking up the hill and he walked on me. I was laying down adjusting this. After he walked by, he turned around, looked, said, "Oh, hi." But at any rate, he had since become a great friend and a mentor, helped me along early when I started, and never looked back, really.
So Blair,
Yeah, what's that?
Blair, were you into photography when you had that telescope, or was that something you came around later? Like, were you ever a visual observer?
Yes, with that telescope, I got my Messier certificate and made a big dent in the finest NGC list. There were a few that I couldn't see in that, and that led to some of the improvements. But yes, I was also into photography. I had a Yashica SLR at the time. And after reading a few articles in Sky and Telescope, I wanted to put this camera on my telescope. Big mistake. I didn't have a motor drive on this telescope, so I added a little Tasco guide scope that I had kicking around from years ago, and practice with the slow motion controls to try and track an object using the little guide scope. And after many unsuccessful attempts, I'm embarrassed by this picture coming. Here's my first astro photo that sort of looks like what it was supposed to be. I have a lot more that don't look anything like they were supposed to be. But this one I sort of got in focus. You can see it's M42. All that orange glow around there took me a while to figure out what that was. That was a leak from the light meter in the camera. It had a red lead and a green lead. And of course, when you're doing astronomy, the red lead, meaning you're underexposed, is always on. And I forgot to take the battery out, so it leaked into the picture. But I was hooked. I could show people what I was looking at. Most notably, I could show my wife what I was looking at, because when she bought me that telescope, it was Christmas, and long enough ago that we used to get real snow, and we had about 3 feet of it in the backyard. And I took the telescope out that Christmas evening and I set it up in the backyard to look at Jupiter. And as soon as I saw Jupiter, I ran in to get Karen so that she could come out and see what I was seeing. And her only comment to me was, I'm a recent med school graduate. I have one of the 2 signatures required to have you committed, and I know people that will give me the other one. Needless to say, she did not like coming out in the cold to look through a telescope. So my first upgrade from that little Tasco was this monstrosity. It was a Meade 8-inch Schmidt-Newtonian, and it was mounted on a tuning fork is the best description. If you tapped that telescope, the extra long fork arms would vibrate for a substantial period of time. But with that, I upgraded to a 2-inch eyepiece adapter, which got rid of the vignetting. We no longer have images that, little circle in the middle of the frame. And with no auto guiding, I was sort of stuck with lunar and planetary images. There's a lot wrong with this picture, but given that it was on film almost 30 years ago, it turned out pretty good. Avius is visible. You can just barely make out the rill in the middle of the crater coming up toward the edge. Like I said, by that time I was well hooked on astrophotography. So the next upgrade that came along, and my upgrade sort of chased technology. For those that don't know me, my day job is electrical engineering and signal processing. So a lot of the upgrades, as soon as digital imaging came along, I jumped in far too early. So I ditched that old tuning fork mount in favor of a Meade German equatorial mount, and designed a guide scope mount. And Steve Tancock, who was a president here at the club at one point in time, he had a machine shop in his garage. He built it for me after I had designed it and showed him what I wanted. And he built a dovetail plate that basically could hold a tank. It was way too thick, way too heavy. And after we drilled it full of enough holes, it actually all worked. The holes got rid of some of the weight. So here you can see the guide scope mount. It was pretty straightforward. 2 screws here, one there, one on the other side to change it in azimuth, and another 2 here and on the other side to change elevation. It gave me a wide range of stars that I could now guide on. It was always a bit of a pain when you're doing manual guiding because you don't have a lot of adjustment and there's never a bright star in the field where you want it. So this solved that problem. As I said, we drilled the dovetail plate and mounting with enough holes to cut the weight down a bit. And now I could do long exposure guided photography. And that really opened up the universe to imaging, the fact that you could guide. So this is what the system looked like. It was a very early go-to mount from Meade. They took the software that they had designed for the original LX200 and they put it in a German equatorial mount. What could possibly go wrong taking software developed for an Altaz telescope and putting it on an equatorial mount? I have a list, by the way, if anyone wants to. But at any rate, it did open up the universe to imaging for me. This is a shot of M42 taken on film. You can see there were some issues with guiding. That was not the fault of the equipment. That was the fault of the astrophotographer. This was manually guided. At any rate, it was on Fujichrome 400 film. Paul, you probably remember that film. It had great red sensitivity, and it was sought after by astrophotographers. It was one of the last major developments for film astrophotography before CCDs came along. And let's just say it was not a film you would want to use at a wedding. White gowns would come out an interesting color, but it wouldn't be white. So I was also able to get some dimmer objects. Here's the Horsehead Nebula. As you can see, I had to work a little on centering. You can imagine that early go-to telescopes were not overly accurate. I had no computer hooked up to this in the field. This was me looking through the viewfinder of a film SLR camera, trying to find the Horsehead Nebula. Obviously, you couldn't see the nebula, but you could see the stars in the field. The problem was the stars were so dim in the field, you couldn't focus on them. So you had to move the telescope to a bright star, focus, then move it back and hope you were somewhere near the right spot. I was somewhere near the right spot anyway. But that'll give you an idea of some of the things we used to have to do to try and get astrophotos. This was the Andromeda Galaxy. Again, they look a whole lot noisier on that screen than they do.
Yeah,
on
they
your
look
scan.
good on the screen.
But, this was a film shot. You can see some of the vignetting. There was no processing to remove any of that in film photography. I'm gonna go to the way, Dave, so you get your picture.
I'm taking a picture of you, man.
Oh. So at any rate, you can see it, got the dust lanes there, companion galaxies. So again, my shots were starting to turn out finally. And just about the time that I started to figure out film photography, CCDs came along. And those experts at that point were saying, why would you ever take a CCD photo? It'll never work. And for the first part of the decade, I guess, when they were very popular, they were right. They didn't work well. And of course, I jumped in. You'll notice the question mark after the upgrade. How does that go? Fools jump in where angels fear to tread. At any rate, I bought a Meade CCD camera. And this was about the time I learned that Meade was a swear word. So to say that camera was frustrating was an understatement. I would take a photo with that camera, manually guide that photo for 20, 30 minutes, start the download. The download would get just about to the end, would take about 20 minutes, by the way, to download the frame. And then it would say, oop, there was an error occurred. It's all done. And that would happen far too regularly. So, as I said, my day job is electrical engineering. So I finally got tired of it. I tore out the guts of the camera, left the sensor in place, replaced the electronics in the camera and the control box with some of my own design, and finally started to get some images off that camera. After working with it for a while, we start to get shots. Boy, that really looks bad on that, doesn't it? We started to get shots like this. So this is M1, and as it says, first recorded by the Chinese in 1054. It was bright enough to be seen during the daytime for several weeks. But there's lots wrong with this image based on the electronics. It was an 8-bit ADC. There are reasons you don't buy 8-bit cameras anymore. You can see them. There's lots of posterization in that image. But they started to turn out. And I picked up a filter wheel, or actually a filter slider, and started doing RGB imaging. So this started to let me get color images. You can see there's a black and white M57 shot. And here's M27 taken through 3 colors, stitched together manually because there was no software to do that. I actually had to write software to put it together. And it would build color image for me after I aligned all the black and white images up. And then I could bring it into something like, at that time, I think it was using Paint Shop Pro. So that gives you an idea of how long ago it's been that I took that image. And the Horsehead Nebula. Now, pay attention to this Horsehead Nebula shot. Believe it or not, it shows more detail than the film shot did. But you'll see several other Horsehead Nebula shots here as we move on, taken from more modern technology. So there was also galaxies. And so we've got M51 and M104, I believe, if I remember right, Sombreau. They were taken at St. Croix one evening. Finally, DSLR years came along. And to say that made a vast improvement in my photos is, again, a big understatement. So I upgraded my whole system. I changed the mount. I got rid of the German Victoria and went to a CGE Pro. And as it says, it was a beast of a mount. It was heavy. Dave Lane helped me carry that in one night to St. Croix from the road. We had a snowstorm and couldn't get the cars in. Dave only ever offered to help me carry that once. Just the equatorial head, so this piece up to here weighed about 60 pounds thereabouts. So that was the piece Dave carried, by the way. He took one look at it, saw the huge tripod and the equipment pier, and said, "Oh, I'll take the light piece." Anyway, I upgraded the telescope from the Schmidt-Newtonian to a much better 8-inch reflector from Skywatcher, and started imaging right off the bat with a Canon Rebel XT. A very early, not the earliest, but a very early Canon Rebel DSLR. I later upgraded to a Canon 60DA and got some extended red sensitivity. And you can see the difference, right? Versus those CCD color images. Things started to look up from there. This was just a single 40-minute exposure. I had figured stacking out and software by this point in time. So this was 10 4-minute sub-exposures put together. And you can see the difference in detail between that and the previous photograph on film of the same target. Horsehead Nebula. So now you can actually see the horsehead as opposed to, imagining it's there in that CCD image. Excuse me. There was a substantial difference in quality, all due to the camera and the gear, not due to the astrophotographer. So my last upgrade takes me from a DSLR, which does have a CMOS chip, to a full CMOS cooled Astro camera. And to say there was a little difference is, again, an understatement. The latest generation of CMOS cameras are just incredible. Both DSLRs and Astro cams. So to give you an idea, this is now, as it says up there, the driveway's end observatory, because that's where it does most of the imaging from the end of my driveway. It has a Skywatcher APO refractor. The camera is a zoom camera, and the mount is a much lighter, although just about as capable Celestron mount. CGE Pro finally broke in a way that I couldn't fix. So I ended up having to buy a new mount. This was my choice. And something else I should mention that has just come along in, Jerry, the last 6-7 years would be dual band filters for color cameras. They are wonderful for those that haven't used them. I'm now able to get images from my light polluted driveway, and I did not put a picture in here of my light polluted driveway, but let's just say you can read a book in my driveway quite comfortably. So I can now get images from my light polluted driveway that were impossible to get just a few years ago. We get images that you'll see some in a few minutes, but this will give you an idea of the difference between the construction of a CMOS chip and a CCD chip. The technology in a CCD is an older technology, and the thing is that these pixels were unable to drive any kind of a bus structure, and I'll get into what that is. So the information from this pixel up here was shifted down through this pixel to this pixel and finally to the output. When you shift like that with the technology that's used in those chips, all of the charge from what was in this pixel doesn't necessarily come out. So when this data shifts into there, it combines with what's left over. That's what causes blooming in some CCD sensors, those that aren't equipped with any blooming. So what will happen is there's leftover information in here. So when this pixel comes down and adds into it, it saturates again. And then when this pixel shifts down, it saturates again. So all of a sudden you get these streaks off bright stars in your image. That's all gone with CCD sensors. The sensor can still saturate, but it won't transfer to the next pixel because the cameras don't shift pixel to pixel. One of the big differences with a CMOS camera is they started integrating the amplifier into the pixel. That meant it could drive a bus structure. So basically this comes out, the information comes down through here on a set of very tiny wires inside the chip. It doesn't shift down through the pixel itself. That caused problems. And those same experts said CMOS will never be as good as CCD because of those problems. And what happens is this takes room, and it takes room away from the light sensitive sensor. Get it?
You saying that every pixel has a little
Amplifier.
solid state integrated circuit?
Yes,
So,
every single pixel.
how is that even possible?
They don't take much room. They're nanometers wide. But yes, every pixel does have, originally in CMOS, it had just an amplifier. Sometimes now they're even putting all of this electronics, which is the A to D converter and that sort of thing, in each pixel. You can imagine the more electronics you put in there, the less room there is for light sensitive surface. And that was the problem with CMOS sensors for years. Somebody had the brilliant idea, why don't we just turn the chip around? Put all the electronics on the back and put the light sensitive stuff on the front. Solved all those problems. It was ingenious. Why they call it back illuminated, I don't know, because they flip the thing around. But back illuminated CCD sensors, which is no doubt what's in the camera that you've got now, are equal or better than CMOS sensors because they have the same sensing system, the same photodiode system, the same available area. All of the problems you had are now gone. You can get the same sensitivity with all of the benefits of this structure. Fast downloads, no blooming, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, end of the technical part. So if you look at my gear right now, I've got a Zoo camera and an Optolong L-enhanced filter. There are lots of different filters out there. This one works well for me because my light pollution isn't as severe as Bob's light pollution, but it's close. So the combination of those two lets us take images of things that were once considered a challenge. So the next train coming, or the next slide coming up here, shows the Crescent Nebula and the Soap Bubble Nebula. So Crescent is obvious. Soap Bubble is right here. It's a small planetary. And it wasn't even known. Yeah, about 2000. I think it was 2007. It was discovered by an amateur. That shot is taken from my driveway. Urban light pollution, the whole bit. And you can get pictures like that. You can now do science from your driveway. You can get images of things that were not possible to image from the city 5-10 years ago. It's just incredible. Yeah.
So you talked about early days, putting film in the freezer.
Yep.
And temperature is still an issue. How do you manage that with modern equipment?
Freezers built in the equipment.
So they have active cooling,
They have active cooling.
but what
now-
about DSLRs?
What's that?
What about DSLRs?
That's actually a good question. These cameras have active cooling, and I'll quote you a few numbers or to give you an idea of just what that does in a minute. But DSLRs have something called dark frame suppression. It's built into CMOS sensors. And dark frame suppression removes the effect of dark current. That greatly reduces the need for cooling. So you can take a 5-minute shot on a DSLR and have very little noise contribution due to dark current. There's all sorts of other contributions, but dark current will be it. Then you take a CMOS sensor like this camera and you cool it and it gets even better. So to give you an idea, the sensor and cooling system in my camera will not generate 1 electron of dark current in 20 minutes when cooled to 10 degrees or -10. So basically, I don't use dark frames in. There's no need. I just keep my subs under 15 minutes. And who needs dark frames? There's no dark current to subtract. You'll love that when you get it hooked up. So The other thing you've seen in several images here is M42. Take a look at the difference. Now, this shot was taken at St. Croix, but take a look at the difference between that and that last shot that I had taken with the DSLR or the film shot. We won't talk about the Tasco shot, but you get the idea. You can start getting pictures like this with modern amateur gear and a little practice, get a lot of practice. So here's the Horsehead Nebula now. This was taken from my driveway in Bedford. That's the job those filters do. And not just the filter, the camera has such a wide dynamic range that it can tolerate the light pollution, even when I don't have a filter there. It's really incredible to see just what those cameras can pull out. Give you an idea. Here's M94. Look at the detail. Now this one was taken from St. Croix. I also have half of it was taken from my driveway, half from St. Croix. The cameras just pull data or detail out that you could not get 10 years ago. They're just incredible these days. I don't know what I'll be saying 10 years from now, but if they get much better, I'm not gonna have to do anything. I can just sit down and churn out pictures. But to give you an idea, modern gear actually allows an amateur to do some real science. So to give you an idea of just what it's like, here's an image taken from the 5-meter Hale telescope. I call it the date wrong, 1982, I believe. Here's an image from my 5-inch refractor. That'll give you an idea of how far things have come. 5 meters on glass plates. 2 meters. If I do my math right there. Just phenomenal difference between what we used to do and what we do now. What it allows us to do is make contributions to science, all the way from discovery to taking follow-on observations. Things like supernova searches, which Paul's intimately familiar with. Amateurs can take a lot of the follow-up images from those. You couldn't do that 10, 15 years ago. We didn't have equipment that would let us get it. This is yep, you can see it. This is a bit of a discovery image for me. It's a reflection nebula that I discovered while shooting the Flying Dragon Nebula. If you, this will work. Everybody see that really faint blue loop that goes around there? Okay. That was an undiscovered reflection nebula in that area of the sky. I stumbled upon it quite literally, courtesy of those filters. I contacted Dave Turner to see if he had any idea what that was. He did a bit of a search and had no luck. Put me in touch with the folks at the Lowell Observatory. They were great. They went through every database they could find, trying to find out what that was, and there was no record of it. Then the folks at Lowell put me in touch with a gentleman out of California that has had several supernova and planetary nebula discoveries. And we went through nights of imaging with varying widths of O3 filters to try and determine whether that was a reflection nebula or an emission nebula like a planetary in this case. Turns out it's pure reflection. It got fainter and fainter as the filter got narrower and narrower. But again, that's work that you couldn't do 15 years ago, just because of the newer equipment that's available. Narrowband filters, cameras that are ridiculously sensitive, both in red and blue light. It's just, the hobby has changed so much over the 30 years that I've been dabbling in it, that we've gone from my first M42 image to images like this, all due to the gear that's now available. Yes, Jude.
Are you getting credit internationally for having discovered the dragons, right?
Yep. And this is just a summary slide, give you an idea as equipment has improved. First film image from a Tasco. Again, a film shot, but on much better optical equipment. Some would say sort of better optical equipment. DSLR images. So when someone says You can't take an astrophoto with a DSLR. Sure you can. They turn out pretty good. Right? And now with a dedicated astrocam. And I don't know what those look like back there, but this projector does mess with focus, doesn't it?
They look good from a distance.
Yeah. Get back further if you want to see it.
They look better on the computer screen.
But at any rate, you can see the improvement in just 30 years. So it will be really interesting to see what happens in another 10 or 15. I'm sure the experts will say you can't use it. Any questions?
So looking at that last photograph, that last slide.
Yep.
How many hours of processing do you do to get it to come out like that?
Less and less. That's something I didn't touch on here, which is the improvement in processing software. This one had zero processing. This one had pretty close to zero processing.
When you were shooting on film, and you were shooting color film, did you have to send it away to get them processed?
No, although I did discover something. I got them done here.
Yeah.
At that time, some of these, like this one was actually printed by Dave. Tarzan Mosier had a darkroom here in town, and they rented it out. And Dave was a member of a club, if you will, that did that, and they printed that one for me. But what I had discovered was if you want to get them printed locally, make sure there's a daytime picture on there. Because what they do is they go along, and I had several rolls of film where the picture was cut in half. Because you can imagine, when you get your negatives, they're cut in strips. Yeah, well, unless you have a daytime shot where they can see where the actual data is, because then they just measure from there. I had several that had, of course, a nebula cut in half, a few other things, some of which brought some new words to my vocabulary.
But, I mean, are you looking at, I don't know, 10 hours, 4 hours processing to get that final image?
This image probably has the better part of 15 or 20 hours.
Yeah.
Now, that's not that I did 15 or 20 hours of processing. It's that I did a couple of hours and figured, crap, that's lousy. Backed up and did it again.
No, I
Right.
get that.
But yeah, this one's probably got 20 hours. This one maybe 5.
Okay.
The newer processing software that's available has a lot of automated techniques that work really well. Yeah, it's made a phenomenal difference. I didn't really touch on that much here, but that's probably as big a change in the hobby as the gear itself. Any other questions? Dave?
Going back to the nebula you discovered.
Yep.
Said it was a reflection that
Yes.
if it had been an emission that you're saying that the emission line would be so narrow that the intensity would be independent of the bandwidth of the filter.
Correct. And as the filter gets narrower and narrower and narrower, what it does is it removes a lot of the hydrogen alpha glow that's in that area. And then the reflection nebula stands out better and better.
But the, if it had been an emission nebula, the intensity of that would not have changed. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. But as it got dimmer and dimmer with narrower filters, that meant that it was not a line emission nebula.
Yeah, okay, I get you.
Yeah, Paul.
On that same topic, being a reflection nebula and not an emission, we know it's not a supernova. Being a ring, you tell me that it's expanding, or at least a shell of something. Is there an idea of what it could be?
Entirely possible.
Red
Yeah.
stars?
Honestly, don't know, Paul. That was something that Dave Turner was curious about, in that there's no obvious illumination source there. Now, can I find it? Stand back here. Yeah. Right about here is actually a small planetary nebula. And is it a shell from that? Who knows? All I know is it's oval in shape. Now that could be circular, tilted to our frame of reference. But as to what is illuminating it, we simply don't know at this point.
Second question.
Yep.
Your last slide. change in technology is drastic. Including inflation, what is the cost of technology between that Tasco shop and your last shop?
Including inflation, ooh. If I use housing prices,
Old is the equipment
I was
cost.
gonna say, if I use housing prices as a guide. I mean, when this Tasco was purchased, it was about $400.
Plus camera.
I already had the camera, but the camera was probably about the same. So, you know, the investment there would have been $800 in 1989. The investment here, get out of my,
Your wife's not
I
here.
won't tell you what.
she knows actually, but yes, she has been extremely supportive of my hobby. Let me put it to you that way. I didn't buy a boat. But at any rate, this would be in the neighborhood of $20,000. Basically,
Not all at once.
not all at once, no. You know, the telescope is about 5,000, the mount is about 7, the camera's about 3. You know, there's guide scopes, guider, all that stuff, purchased, as you said, over time. But it'd be in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 for that. But then again, I don't drink, so it works out.
You know what this means though, Blair? It's gonna be a plywood box, not an oak test.
That's right. I've already been told it's going to be ashes sprinkled somewhere. Any other questions?
Cardboard box.
Yeah, cardboard.
What are your feelings about the robotic revolution that ZWO is sort of spearheading?
How did those experts say that'll never work? Actually, they're taking some decent images, to say the least. Are they up to the quality of, you know, a $20,000 system? Absolutely not. Will they be in 10 years? Probably. You know, so it's early days. I think you will find that the limitations that you get with those right now are that they don't track in the equatorial sense. They're almost all alt-as, if I remember correctly. That really limits how long your subs can be. I think you will find in the not too distant future, people are going to start putting those on mounts that let them do it, and then they're going to start building them with those mounts. And I think you'll find then that the quality will take a huge leap. Anything else?
Well, thanks a lot, Blair. That was great. So before Tony gives us news from the board, let me just mention an outreach opportunity that's coming up. There's a camp in Berwick that is asked to have a stargazing session on the 27th of July. Rain date's the 28th. If anyone's familiar with Berwick, if you're driving through in the direction of the South Mountains, it's on the right. Used to be heavily forested, lots of pine trees, or either pines or hemlock. A lot of them got blown down in a windstorm 2 years ago. Anyway, that's where they want to do it. So I'm going to go down with a couple telescopes, one for visual and my little robotic. I've got a dwarf too, which is similar to the Sea Star. And if anyone is in the valley or feels like a drive, just email me, let me know.
What was the date again?
27th of July. Okay, so Tony.
Just a couple of very brief comments. We're trying to focus some efforts in the center on observing this year. So if there's anybody has any interest in some of the observing certificates, I'd encourage you to reach folks online. Encourage you to reach out to me, let me know. We're trying to think of some ways that we can help facilitate those who are interested in some of obtaining some of those observing certificates. So just let me know, and we'll develop a plan and hopefully get you started and maybe do a little mentoring. The National AGM meeting is coming up in June. These are, the member, we encourage you to attend. There's lots of things happening at the national level. It's important for all members to be aware of what those things are and have a chance to provide some input. You do need to register, so hopefully you received an email that tells you how to register. If not, just log on to the National RASC site, search for AGM, and you'll find the 2024 AGM page there and a way to register.
And it's free.
It's free. Yes, thank you, Julie. And finally, I've circulated, hopefully everyone's received a copy of the plan. We've been working on that. And I've received some feedback from some folks already, so thank you very much for that. And please have a look at the plan. Let me know your thoughts and about things. And we'll have more to say about that. We're hoping to get some groups of people together to help facilitate some of the things that are in that plan. Because the key to making any of it happen is to have members to participate. So, thank you.
Okay, so it's time for what's up.
Wow.
We got a couple decent things. True. Till the fog starts in July.
It's like their soccer clips.
Yeah,
We still nice.
Okay, so what's up in the June sky? In passing, this is a shot I got of the aurora just outside of Macedon Ridge. Clear skies. Got to experience a great night. Okay, we're in the least favorite month for astroimagers. Only about 4 hours of darkness on the solstice.
Yeah, filters don't help.
No filters don't help with that. So today sunsets at 8:53, and believe it or not, dawn started at 3:10, which is when I got up and shut off my imaging rig. Sunrise at 5:30, so 15, almost 15 and a half hours of sunlight. And it's no better by the end of the month. But then it'll get better. So, summer solstice is at 5:30 on PM on Okay, the large picture I got off spaceweather.com this morning, and this particular sunspot group, AR3697, has already unleashed 3 X-class solar flares since it cleared the southeast limb of the sun. So if it stays super active, then we may get some more northern light displays if it clears by the end of the week. So it's not yet Earth facing. I took these pictures of it just as it cleared the southeast limb of the sun, and it's hiding in alpha. You can see how active it is. Interestingly, that is the same sunspot that was responsible for the May 10 aurora. So it's gone, transited the far side of the sun and come back, and it's a little bit smaller, still active.
Do you have a picture of it from its previous transit?
I showed that in, I think in the montage. Yeah, it's about it's about half the size that it was previously, but it's
That's the previous was a naked eye spot.
Yeah.
Eclipse glass.
Yes.
Yeah, this one is, I've looked.
Yeah.
Can't quite. follow.
Yeah, with those little 6x30 eclipse binoculars, it shows up.
Yeah.
Pretty obviously. Yeah, it's not.
If you can find the sun.
Yeah, yeah, that's the trick of those things. Pointing out noctilucent clouds. This is the season for them. They appear as a result of sunlight below the horizon, reflecting little ice crystals in the upper atmosphere. So these ice crystals are as high as 85 kilometers. So way up there. And you'll see them in the summer months after sunset during astronomical twilight. They're pretty nice. So we had a nice display of them a few years ago.
Is that 2019, that picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. There's actually a video with everybody's pictures on. I'll put on the list.
Yeah, that would be good. It was pretty amazing because I'd just been reading about them and stepped out the front door, looked up at the sky and said, wow. Ran back and got my DSLR.
I can't remember who saw them first. I know Paul Grady. You saw them, didn't you, Paul? Is he here?
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, they're quite easy to read.
Yeah.
Somebody tipped us off and they all went out.
Anyway, so maybe we'll get to see some more. The moon this month. So we're in the waning crescent phase of the frog's broken moon. And the new moon will be June 6th. That'll be the trees fully leafed. On June 9, moon will be near the Beehive cluster. Photomorph first quarter on the 14th. And then on the 19th, the moon's near the M4 globular cluster in Antares. And full moon on the 22nd. Then at the end of the month on the 27th, the moon is near Saturn. So if you've got a DSLR and a tripod, that's what you'd see if you've got not a full frame, but an APS-C sensor in your camera with 135 millimeters of focal length. You'll be able to get the Beehive cluster and a crescent moon. Shows up quite nicely. Downside is, I think their forecast is clouds. Maybe not producing clouds. Maybe. Anyway, yeah, it may get better. Right? So that'd be a nice image to photograph. 19th with binoculars, couple nice images. So on the 19th, you can see Antares, the globular cluster, and a almost fully illuminated moon. That's going to make it difficult to make out the globular cluster, but Antares is certainly. And then on the 27th, we'll be able to catch Saturn and the moon in the same field of view. If you're working on lunar observations for the universe or for the moon, best dates are around first quarter, so June 12th, 16th. If you don't mind staying up all night, you can also use the days around last quarter. This way lets you get some sleep. Planets in June. There's a challenge here. Mercury, at the start of the month, is visible very low in the east before sunrise, and then it'll disappear into the glare of morning twilight until the last week of the month, when it's low in the west after sunset. So see if you can see Mercury in the morning, below June 6th, or in the evening, just after sunset. It's going to be fairly bright, but it's also going to be fairly close to the sun. So there's going to be a lot of twilight glare. Venus is too close to the sun to be visible this month. Mars is a pre-dawn object in Aries, too bright, and close to the waning crescent moon tomorrow and morning and the day after, which is going to be cloudy. Jupiter appears in Taurus before sunrise at the start of the month, and it'll get higher in the sky, in the morning sky, as the month goes on. Saturn is a good target, planetary target right now. If you're a night owl, it rises in the east about 2 a.m. start of the month. It gets pretty high, although then you're going to be infringing on the pre-dawn twilight. But as I said, on the 27th, close to the waning gibbous moon, Uranus has been in the glare of the sun, pre-dawn sky, but it will emerge and be visible as the month goes on. And Neptune is also in the pre-dawn sky in the constellation Pisces. So, explore the universe, summer constellations. We've got Cygnus, Lyra, Hercules, Aquila, Capricornus, Sagittarius, and Scorpius. As I noted earlier, twilight ends late, so it's 11:30. You don't have a lot of dark sky, but you can easily knock off those summer constellations. And with those constellations, we have a number of summer stars. So Vega, Altair, Antares, Deneb, and Resolgethi. Those are good stars to know their location. You've got a SynScan go-to map, if you can use those stars for one. The June summer deep sky object is an asterism, a Coathanger asterism, also known as Brocchi's cluster or Colander 399. And you find it a third of the way from Altair to Vega. So, Vega is the bright star at the left. Altair here, so you go put that line up about a third of the way, find the Coathanger. It's pretty neat. I took this picture and it doesn't show well on the screen, but it really does look like a Coathanger. And your double star for June is a really pretty triple. It's an optical triple in the constellation Cygnus, Omicron 1 Cygni, and it's looks a bit like a hockey stick. It's pretty easy to find once you locate it. Although yeah, Judy's laughing because I've heard stories of it.
It's because of those stars I had my eyes operated on.
We were out in at the sky circle at Keji, and we were observing the double star. And, we were both getting frustrated.
He said, "Why can't you see?" And I said, "Can't you see?"
Well, look for it. It's worth hunting for. Quite a pretty.
It is. It's quite cool to see once you can see
Yeah.
it.
So here's another challenge for you. There's an evening comet, and I showed the picture that Jerry took in Montage. That's comet C2023A3 in Virgo, and this is my picture of it. I had to take that picture through some trees, so it's not the greatest. I had to throw away 3/4 of the frames, but I was able to get the head and the tail. So, and as I said, that's one that bears watching. It may be pretty spectacular.
The first time comments.
Yeah, yes.
Is it?
Well, it doesn't have a P.
No.
It's, would have been discovered early 2023.
Yeah.
But it's-
Just a little fuzzy dot.
Wow, these are robot telescopes that are, oh, no, Shannon, is that a person? Atlas is.
Atlas is the
Some sort of array.
robotic array.
Yeah, but that's a person.
Yeah.
Name. It's getting really hard to discover comets visually. these days with all the
The
telescopes.
robotic arrays, yeah.
It's been a while since somebody's actually discovered one by looking.
Now you can still discover supernovae.
Yeah, I guess.
Lots, if you don't mind scanning all the visible galaxies, look for a bright point of light that wasn't there a year ago. One other object for exploring the universe is artificial satellites. So the International Space Station's an easy one. You go to spot the station, NASA, get dates and times for its appearance over Halifax or wherever else you are. And if you're a real sucker for punishment, you can try to take a picture of it with your Astrocam and a Dobsonian. You have to manually track.
Tried that.
I got that picture of it. I was pretty happy with it, but it was an exercise in frustration.
What are the details of how you took that?
I used one of my planetary astrocams, and I have a dog. My dog is a truss model, so it's hard to find focus for the dog. But because of the truss model, I was able to drop it down a few inches, artificially shorten the focal length, and then I could get focus with one of my astrocams. And then I waited for them over, and I manually tracked through the viewfinder, through the finder scope.
And what shutter speed is that? Not the shutter, but
Yeah. Recall, it's pretty bright, so it wasn't very long.
It's well below a second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well below. Yeah, it was in the. Yes, in 50 milliseconds. But I only had. I mean, I took about 300-400 frames of video. I threw out all but 40 or so. because it was somewhere blurred and some.
It's interesting to do that visually. Looking through the eyepiece.
Yes.
It's not in the field long enough for your eye to adjust the brightness. So it's one of the few times I've ever looked at something and had my eye go, what? And then the pupil closes.
Yeah. And I guess you could put a neutral density filter.
I didn't at that time, but yeah, it's something I want to do next time. Yeah.
But it's fun to try. That's it for this month. Any questions?
what's that a picture of?
Mars and the Beehive cluster. Took that last year. I think it got. I sent it into UBC Sky at Night. They put it in their astrophotography. All right, so thanks everyone. Hope you enjoyed the meeting. You're not going to Dark Sky Weekend or to the East. I guess we'll see you in
September 7th.
September 7th. Yeah.